Finance Committee will come to order, please. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for being here. Finance Committee will come to order. Any citizens in the audience wishing to address the committee? There being none, we'll move on to item 3, approval of the minutes. I'll entertain a motion for approval of the minutes from the August 25th meeting.
Move approval of the minutes.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion or questions? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion passes. All right, Ms. Clark, item 4, CFO update. Good morning, Ms. Clark. I understand this is your final day here at JPS. As you've given the chairman of the Finance Committee an Aggie t-shirt and an Aggie book.
Correct, and I wanted you to be polished up for the Saturday game.
I appreciate that.
Embarrass yourself Saturday.
Well, he can still embarrass himself even in that t-shirt.
Yeah, you'd be amazed at my ability to embarrass
He is a
myself.
UT grad. He is a UT grad, that's quite obvious.
I'm a pro. Okay.
So, I did want to give the board an update. Last Tuesday, our commissioners board did approve our budget as presented for our calendar year, or our fiscal year 17. So that was a very positive wrap up to our budget process.
Inclusive with the tax rate?
Tax rate, so no change to the tax rate for this year. I am happy to also report that it was 5-0 vote, which was also very positive as we proceed into this year. In my time, I also wanted to give you guys a little update on our materials management function. As part of my role here over the last year, part of my responsibilities are our materials function. We were lucky enough to hire Joe Velasquez, and I probably have messed up the name as I have done many times. I'm going to ask him and Gina Adler to come on up. And as I've done over the last few months, I'm going to take a few minutes to introduce Joe to you guys, tell him a little bit about himself. And I also want to introduce some of the changes and improvements that he's made on supply chain. And supply chain, if you are not in a hospital or have not worked in a hospital, logistically is very different. And there are things that you cannot and maybe should not imagine happen in a hospital on a daily basis, a monthly basis, that you cannot comprehend. And I want you to get a good flavor. We're also going to be asking you to approve the purchasing policy that I want you to have an appreciation for. We talk a lot about diversity. We talk about the vendors and the challenges that we have there. Joe brings over 30 years of supply chain experience. And it's not just supply chain, it is healthcare supply chain experience. He's got a really varied background, all in Texas. And I'm going to look at my notes because Joe has worked for for-profit hospitals, not-for-profit hospitals, military, state. He's also ventured out and had some experience working for GPOs. So when we start to talk about pricing and bidding, he has ventured over and understands some of the financial benefits that GPOs have to offer, and also brings to the table the financial acumen that we don't often RFP process, some of the underworkings of the GPOs, and how to really interpret how some of the pricing that we see on the surface works underneath. So, we discussed when I was working through his introduction, what do you want the committee to understand about you? He was like, well, we're just going to round down. So Joe is a very humble guy. And when Joe came to us in February, he had been at Parkland. And again, very lucky that he came over. If you remember, we had been without a permanent position in materials for over a year. He brought a lot of calmness to that area, a lot of discipline to that area. He has been in Farmers Branch for about 5 years. He has a son, 2 daughters, 4 grandkids. Started about 14, right? With his
Right,
grandkids?
it's about 14.
Yeah. So I'm going to turn it over to Joe. We do have a few slides if you'd rather look. These have been put on your board portal. The org chart is very small. We don't really want you to be able to read that org chart necessarily. I didn't ask him to redo it. What I want you to see on the org chart is just the complexity and how many functional areas are reporting up. So don't worry about trying to get into each box. It's more of just a graphical representation of the functions and the flow and all of the separate areas that are going on in that department. So I'm going to turn it over to Joe and let him talk to you for about 5-10 minutes. If you do have questions, if you don't understand some of the acronyms, some of the functions are very hospital specific. So please do not hesitate to ask questions. I think the back and forth will be helpful. So I'm going to turn it over.
Okay. Thank you.
Fix it.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. I know that Sharon said that I kind of feel like I'm the lucky one to be able to come to JPS. As she said, previous to JPS, I was at Parkland, spent my whole career, and I kind of downsized the number of years I've been in healthcare, but it's been quite a number of years. I started when I was 18 years old working in healthcare. I used to be a pharmacy tech, and that's where I got my start. And somehow I worked for Bexar County Hospital District, I worked for Dallas County. Somehow I keep gravitating back to the public hospitals because I believe in the mission that it undertakes, whether it's Dallas County, Tarrant County. So I'm glad to be here. So what I'll do is I'll jump right into the presentation, looking at supply chain. And I do call it supply chain. A lot of people refer to it as purchasing, but it's really not just purchasing. It's as Sharon said, it's a very complex operation, and it's not as easy as moving a box from point A to point B. So what I'll do is I'll start with the organizational chart. And of course, if you look at the top of the organizational chart, you'll see the director of supply chain. And then I have an administrative assistant that's been really a big help to me since I've been making my transition. So I really appreciate Ginger. She's been a great help to me. If I start from the left to the right, you'll see where I have a couple of managers. One is a manager of supply chain operations, and then the other one is a manager over our distribution warehouse. And I'll go ahead and start from the left. And we have our procurement team, and we have 5 buyers. And what's real interesting there is those buyers not only purchase the goods and services, but we also have an individual in there, the materials management coordinator, that also helps with the process, all the capital equipment purchases. Under that purchasing function, I'll go over some statistics real quick. Our purchasing department per year processes about 88,000 requisitions a year. And that comes out to about 51,000, 52,000 purchase orders per year. Now, when you put a dollar value on top of that, that's about $126 million of our spend in supplies and goods and services that goes through the purchasing department. And we do have an automated, what we call a materials management information system that we use to help process that and make that an automated process. Now, some of that we do use manual purchase, we do the manual process, but others is through what we call EDI, which is an electronic form of transmitting those orders direct to our vendor partners. And then the other function that we do there is manage all the product recalls as well. Product recalls are related to products where a manufacturer has said there's a defect with the item or there's a problem or an issue, so we have to reach out to all our departments and make sure that we identify where those items are, and if we need to return them back to the manufacturer, that we pick them up and get them returned. And so we work in conjunction with our folks that manage the recall process. So the next function there is our RFP process. And we do have one individual who manages that RFP. So all the RFPs that go out for bidding are managed by one person. And to date, we're probably going to do about 92 to 100 RFPs for the year. And these RFPs can be simple, but they can be complex as well. It just depends on what it is that we're purchasing and that we're buying. And so she acts as a liaison between what we call our customer base in the departments, our contract owners, as well as with the vendor. So that way we try to keep some standardization and making sure that all the questions that vendors may have are funneled through one person rather than through various individuals. So the next item on, as you're going from left to right, you'll see our and again, let me say this, that with the RFP, we also work with business diversity. Our business diversity department, we're collaborating with them to make sure that we're reaching out to those vendors that are certified as MWBEs and have that opportunity to be able to compete for the business that JPS has to offer. So that's an important aspect, and that's one that we're working with Nydia Gonzalez and her team to collaborate and make sure that we're starting to reach out to those vendors that are MWB certified in order for us to give them the opportunity to compete for that business as well. And then the next team, as we're going left, we'll call our supply chain technology team. It's really what we call our MMIS team. They use the Lawson application. And what they do is make sure that all the pricing that we have in our computer system is accurate, that if there's any discrepancies or anything like that, that they're able to address those issues as well. And so they're the ones that basically are the backbone heading up our automated materials management information system application. And as we move to the right, you'll see the value analysis team as well. And these folks are very important because they kind of work with our purchasing team and our MMIS team in order to make sure that we're looking at products that we buy, that we're benchmarking those products, and that we're making sure that we're getting a very competitive price for those products as well. But they also look at it also from a clinical perspective and making sure that we're buying quality products that are acceptable to our physicians and our clinicians before we introduce those products into JPS. And we support the value analysis teams. We have about 6 or 7 value analysis teams. Those have been headed up by Kathleen Whalen. And so we're very collaborative with them. We do the benchmarking and the analytics to make sure that we are getting the best price for those products. So as you can see so far, there's a lot of moving parts to the supply chain purchasing team, and it's just not cutting purchase orders and buying stuff. There's a lot of integration that goes along with the whole process. And then as we move to the right, we're talking about our distribution manager for distribution. And that's the folks that take care of all the items that we receive in our dock, coming in through the dock and receive that and bring it up to the floors, as well as we have individuals that go up to every nursing floor where there's a stock room, make sure that those things are part levels what we term par levels are kept up to date so that nurses have the products that they need to take care of the patients up on the floors. And we also, from our distribution center, we also support the community health clinics as well as the correctional health facility, the jail that we have.
So those are the vans I see driving around?
That's transportation, but transportation, we work in conjunction with transportation to make sure that the supplies get out to the clinics. But you're right, that those are the vans that are driving around. So, let me go to the next slide. And this just gives you the responsibilities that we have and then some of the statistics that I've already covered. As you can see, right here, process of purchase orders. So we do process all the purchase orders for JPS. There are some outliers, but for the majority of the part, anytime that a purchase order has to be cut, it typically comes through our purchasing department under the supply chain umbrella. We have value analysis, which I talked about. So we do price benchmarking and supply spend analytics. We take a look at any value propositions that vendors have, and we take a look at them to see whether they benefit JPS. But more importantly, we make sure that we're looking at it from a clinical aspect as well. But the overall purchase of the product is just not always the best price is always the right product. But we take a look and analyze the whole picture rather than just a segment of the picture. And then we also talk about vendor diversity, and I know that we have a big initiative with vendor diversity ongoing right now. In my background, I work with HCA, which is the largest for-profit owners of hospitals. My job was with the Gulf Coast Division to take a look at vendor diversity. So I'm very well inclined as to try to develop that piece of the business and working with our diversity and inclusion department to help them see where we can penetrate that market as well. So. And then, of course, the other thing we do is capital acquisition management. And we processed, in a given year, about 286 capital requests. And the total line items was about 1,215 line items. But it's really the dollars that we spend in that acquisition, which are, could be upwards of 20 to 30 million, I guess, in capital equipment. So is that correct? That's about right. And then par management. Par management basically is those stock rooms as you walk the nursing floors. Those are stock rooms. Somebody has to restock them. They don't get restocked by themselves, and we have folks down in our warehouse distribution area that go up to the floors and restock those rooms every day, including Saturday and Sunday. So the other areas that we have responsibility is the acclaim clinics, which is a new venture for us that we just started. But we've just undertaken a couple of clinics, the Ben Hogan and I hope I don't butcher the Clapsaba Clinic. And so that's just something that recently happened. I believe it was the start of September. And so we're gearing up to support them as far as supply chain support, whether it's purchasing products, equipment, furniture, whatever it is, we're there to support them. As well as the Tarrant County Correctional Facility. We try to support them in making sure that they have all the products that they need to take care of those patients at the correctional facility. And then we talk about vendor credentialing. When we talk about vendor credentialing, we're talking about vendors that actually step foot inside JPS. Now, if they step into the hospital, we want to make sure that they have the proper credentials plus the proper immunizations. And so anybody that steps into JPS needs to be credentialed to our vendor credentialing system. Vendor credentialing started years ago because we had folks that were making contact, or vendors, with patients, but we needed to make sure they had the right credentials, whether it was someone that was coming into the OR or any of our clinics. If we need to get the flu shot, they need to get the flu shot. Whatever we require, they're required to get that as well. And plus, we check them to make sure that they are not sanctioned businesses or sanctioned individuals if they want to do business with JPS. So it's more complex than just vendor credentialing. So, and then we talk about GPO, our group purchasing organization. And what I like to describe our GPO is like the Sam's Club of the world. You got members that buy memberships into that, and then they take those memberships volumes for products and services, leverage that with manufacturers, and try to get the best price out of there. And then our distribution center. which is really interesting because a lot of people don't know where our distribution center is. But just to give you a little bit of statistics, requisitions that we processed through there was about 70,000 in a year. And line items processed is 333,000 line items. So it's about a 50,000 square foot warehouse, but the way it is, it's not out by itself. It's located behind the hospital, and you just got to walk in to see where it's at because it's kind of hidden. Purchasing is kind of hidden. People don't know we're back there until they
need something.
Till they need something. Then they find out where they're at.
And you become their best friend.
Yeah, exactly. And then we carry about 1,300 line items in the warehouse on any given day, and that comes out to about $900,000 of inventory that we have in our warehouse. And I tell my folks, when I walk in that warehouse, I don't see products, I see dollars sitting in that warehouse. Our job is to try to make the most effective use of those dollars that we have sitting there. And then inventory turns per year is about 15 turns. So that means that whole inventory is turning about 15 times, which the national average is about 12 turns per year. So we're doing pretty good, but I think we still have a lot of work to do in reducing the value of what we carry, because we do feel that we can reduce that inventory value, which will reduce the number of dollars that we have sitting in that warehouse. So, okay. And then the next slide, just talk about some of the future plans that we have for supply chain. And we're talking about doing our materials management loss and upgrade. We're going to 10.0 upgrade, which will happen sometime in February of next year. We're also doing part supply optimization on the nursing floors. We want to make sure that we're constantly checking the nursing floors and talking to our key customers up on the floors to make sure that we have the right products that they need to take care of patients. You don't want to delay patient care because they don't have the right material or supplies up there to take care of those patients. And then central supply, the repurposing of the department. What we're basically talking about doing there is turning that supply department into an after-hours supply room where nurses can call down if they need something on an emergency basis, and then we can run it up to them. So that's something that we'll be working on next year to take care of. And then you're talking about upgrading the capital acquisition software. We're also looking at doing that a little more streamlined than it is right now in order to expedite the process of acquisition of capital equipment. And then RFP software assessment, we're trying to do the RFP as a paperless type environment. Right now it's very paper intensive. So we're going to look to see ways of how we can, and we have a way we can do that, but we'll be working on that next year, or this coming fiscal year. So that way we can go to a paperless type environment. Because if you come down to the office, you'll see the number of books, binders that we get for an RFP. It could be 10 binders, a lot of paper wasted. So we're we're going to move forward and make that a paperless type environment. And then mobile supply chain upgrade. Mobile supply chain is basically, if you ever walk into Walmart, you'll see some folks out there with handheld devices. That's what we use to go up to the floors to take inventory and bring that information down to our MMIS system. Right now, we have to physically bring that handheld down and dock it into a station. What we want to do is be able to use the Wi-Fi and kind of transmit it back down to, or have a docking station on the floors where we can expedite and turn it around a lot faster. So, PAR Express upgrade. We recently upgraded all the floors with touchscreens and scanners. When I got here, we didn't have that, and fortunate enough that Sharon and Gina agreed to go ahead and fund the upgrade so that way we'd be standardized. So now the nurses can use the touchscreens to issue supplies to patients, and they use scanners so that way we can make sure that we have proper utilization of supplies, and then we can not only replenish them, but also take a look at where our money is being spent on supplies that are being used on the floors. And then distribution center optimization. We're looking at how we can streamline, make that a lot faster. When we go to picking, make it easier for our staff to find supplies, make sure that we have plenty of supplies and the right amount of supplies, and also reduce the amount of inventory that we have there so those dollars can be utilized elsewhere. and then increase supply fill rate to customers. We want to make sure that we're taking care of our customers on the floors, the clinics, the jail, making sure they're getting what they need when they need it at the right time, at the right place. And then we're going to increase the security around the distribution center. Right now, because of the way we have our structure, we're concerned that we want to make sure that after hours that we have our folks there that can issue supplies, and people just don't have the ability to come in and get supplies as they need it. So, and then we're also looking at an automated way of when we run out of a product or we need a substitution, that we can automatically do that without having to contact the nurses to figure out what's a correct substitution. So we do have a table in our system that we built that when we're out of this product that's in inventory, we can automatically switch the products out without having to have a lot of intervention. So, that's pretty much it for my presentation. So if y'all have any questions, I'd be glad to answer those.
Yeah, thank you very much for that presentation. When I was in business school, I took a supply chain class, and the two things that came away with was it's very hard. It kicked my butt. And the other was how important and underappreciated, and how underappreciated yet important it is to any business operation, any large or small organization. How important what you're doing is, and to a large organization, it magnified so many times. So thank you for the expertise you're bringing and those improvements. That's value to the taxpayers and helping this organization run better. So thank you very much for that.
Well, thank you.
Any questions from the?
Just a quick
Yes,
one.
sir.
On the supply side, you mentioned earlier that you want to make sure that we have the best pricing. And then, but GPO usually dictate certain pricing. So how does that work?
Well, I mean, and Sharon talked about the policy that y'all will be looking at, and we're looking for approval, but GPO access is just going to give us another avenue. Doesn't mean that we'll exclusively use GPOs, because I think that it's just going to be the beginning of a price point. But it's a little more complicated because the other initiative that we have is a vendor diversity initiative. Okay, a lot of these vendors are not necessarily have a GPO contract. So what we'll look at, we'll look at the product that we're doing the acquisition or that we need. We'll look at the landscape to see whether there's opportunity to have MWBEs, minority vendors, respond to that. But we also look at the benchmarking data that we have. We use a system called HCIQ that is a database of 2,000 hospitals that have provided pricing. We don't know who they are, but it gives us the idea of where the best price is. And so the GPO price, in my mind, is just a starting point. If we feel that we can get better pricing out in the market by doing an RFP, we'll do that too. If we feel that there's opportunity for us to engage with MWBEs, that's the other thing that we're going to look at as well. So we are members of a GPO, but that doesn't mean it's the end game, and that's the only thing that.
So we're not in a committed relationship.
We're not. The one thing that we can't do, and I wouldn't recommend, is to have an exclusive relationship with any GPO that does not allow us to go out there and compete the landscape.
And do you have enough tools to catch them from repackaging and all that stuff?
When you say repackaging?
Repackaging, sometimes packaging can make a lot of difference in pricing.
Well, there is, but that's a good question, because there are companies out there that would like to do that, that would like to bundle agreements. But from my standpoint is I believe every agreement should stand on its own merits. Okay, because what they try to do is bundle agreements and say, if you have this agreement here with our company and you have one here, if you go away from here, it's going to affect the price over here. And to me is that kind of restrains competition, because what they try to do, now, I'm not saying that doesn't make sense. I'm just saying that you have to look at each case by case, and look at what your strategy is and the other initiatives that you have ongoing to make sure that we're supporting what the strategic plan is of the organization. Okay? So
do you need additional tools to be able to defend? I mean,
well, of course,
better informed decision.
Yeah, that's an open-ended question. I'll always say yes. Of course, we always need additional tools. But I think we do pretty darn good right now. Yeah, because we do have those benchmarking tools, and we do have that database. And I think, looking at that is that we constantly have to keep up to date on what the marketplace has to offer. And so we'll utilize the GPO to give us some of that data, but we'll also go elsewhere to get that data as well.
What I'm concerning about is, sometime when we have multiple contracts, just want to make sure that you have enough tools to make sure that we can detect favoritism.
Yeah, that's
because once you're outside of the GPO, it's hard to tell. So
right.
Just want to make sure that we don't get ourselves in trouble down the road.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. And one thing about GPOs that I'd like for everyone to understand is they do use a bidding process.
Right.
They use the American Bar Association bidding rules.
Oh, I'm good. I'm with
you're good with that?
I was
Okay.
with MedAsset before.
Oh, you were with MedAsset?
Yeah, I was their president. So
Okay. So,
on
yeah.
the revenue cycle side.
So
I
you know
understand that
about
side.
GPOs already,
I do.
so I don't have to tell you about that. A lot of people don't understand that, so, but, yeah.
I'm,
But yeah.
I'm assuming you were with HPG?
I was with MedAssets Broadlane.
Okay.
Yes,
Acquisition
before they
side.
got bought by MedAssets. And so, yeah, so,
Did you ever report to DT Wynn?
not that I was aware of.
He was with Pat Ryan.
So, no, it's kind of complicated. It's not an easy slam dunk. But certainly, like with capital equipment, I wouldn't say that we always go with the GPO pricing, but, there's a lot of things that we want to accomplish from standardization of equipment. But we want to make sure that we continue to provide a fair market, a fair, balanced, competitive marketplace for our vendors. So,
No, I'm just want to make sure you have enough tools to do
well,
your work.
we're always looking at that. I was just at a show where I'm always looking at tools. We always try to get our folks educated with the latest and greatest to make sure that we do have the right tools. So just because we have one tool right now, there's always competition, as you're aware, with MedAssets, that MedAssets has their set of tools, but so do other GPOs and so do other companies, yeah.
Thank you.
Let me assure you how well you did in answering that question, that the two people that control your budget are sitting to the right and the left of you, and the one that finally approves it asked you the question. You did very well.
Okay, any other questions?
No, it's very thorough.
Thank you so much. That was great. Very, very informative. Very glad you're here.
So that was just a preview to get you mentally prepared for the policy that we're going to be talking about. Policy 7200 is really a formalization of what we actually do down in purchasing. It's actually, the approval that we're requesting is on page 1665 in your board packet. As with the policy last month, this is a simple policy. The procedure behind it is much more complex. What we're asking approval for is the one-page policy on page 16. And just to prevent any confusion, the draft that was on page 14 was management's draft of a new policy. What appears to be a red line on 16 is the legal comments. So the final draft on page 16 is the new final draft after legal comment. So it's not really the red line version. It's a very straightforward policy. And I did want to spend a little bit of time saying that the procedures, again, that started on page 25 of 65, the two new items that would be attached here are on page 28 under 8G, which talks about sole source. That would be a new procedure where the CFO, which is myself, would be able to recognize a sole source vendor, where the best example that I could give you in this instance is that we have been presented with in the last year that I have been the CFO here at JPS, is when we have a vendor capital purchase that the warranty would require us, or probably more, there would be a dedicated set for an IV pump that we have purchased. And this vendor is the only one that produces the dedicated tubing that would fit this IV pump. There is no other vendor that produces it because it would be under patent. Under our old procedure, we would be required to go ahead and produce an RFP, which requires staff resources to post it, even though there's not another vendor that would be able to respond to the RFP. Under this new procedure, recognizing that, I would be able to recognize that vendor as a sole source and supersede the RFP process. That would be an unusual item and infrequent, but we would be able to do that. The second item is item number 9 on page 30, which is to recognize the efforts that the GPO does for us and their weekly and monthly bidding process in the RFP. Now, as Joe has already described, we do not take a GPO pricing and at face value and do nothing with it at that point in time. Part of the process that we always do is look at the GPO pricing. It is the starting point many times. We look at the benchmark that we have, and if it is not within the top 10 to 25% of best pricing, we will often go out for RFP on that product. So, again, these are some of the changes that we have not had in our procedure up to this point.
The other thing I would say is, General Counsel, this procedure and this policy brings us in line and up to date with the County Purchasing Act, as well as some provisions of the Local Government Code. And it provides much more flexibility than we've had in the past, as Sharon said. The sole source issue, she ultimately makes that determination, but that's consistent with her. That will be a recommendation to the board. So ultimately the board, the governing body, has to approve that. But right now, she will be the one that will make that recommendation, and that's not been clear. In the past, we've had to go to the County Commissioner's Court to get that approval. This is going to eliminate having to go to the County Commissioner Court, and it will lie with the Board of Managers now.
My only question is, at what time should we set a time frame if we go sole source? A year or 18 months from that point to see if there's an RFP out? Because there may be, at that time, some competitive bid may exist, or?
Only to the extent of the length of the contract. If it's, say, a 3-year term contract, then when that contract expires, then that issue of sole source would be back on the table.
Okay. That works. Okay.
Yeah.
So today, we would be asking for approval for the policy. The procedure that is attached is information
Procedure there for information.
So the policy on page 16.
LD 7200,
policy,
4700 is what you're approving. And by the way, I want to, Joe has been a breath of fresh air from my office in terms of General Counsel. We work very closely with purchasing in terms of some of those complex RFPs with contracts and so forth. And Joe, we appreciate the opportunity to work with you and how that you've made a smooth transition in coming here.
Thank you.
That's been great.
Would the company or individuals present documentation that determines that they are sole source?
Yes, we require them. First, the thing that starts the process as sole source is the vendor claiming they're sole source, and they have to provide documentation and a letter outlining the background and just why it's sole source, and then Sharon will now make the determination of whether that she's got enough documentation, or does she need additional documentation, or if it's got a legal question behind it, because that is a legal definition as to whether something's sole source. Then she and I would be working together.
Okay. So I'll entertain a motion for approval of this policy as
Move for
requested.
approval.
We have a motion by Mr. Nguyen, second by Mr. Bose. Any further questions? All in favor, please say aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, Joey. Thank you, Sharon. Okay, we're going to move to item number 6A, financial report.
So for the month of August, from a volume standpoint, our inpatient volumes were relatively low compared to our budget. We were about 4% under budget in admissions. Our patient days followed that by about 2% under budget. Now, if you recall, last month, for the month of July, our case mix index, I reported, was very low, but we had a delay in coding, and I had expected in August we would see catch up in that, and indeed we did. Our CMI for the month was reported at 1.67, which is very high. If you go back and you average both July and August, those 2 months would have been 1.58 compared to a 1.55 budget for the 2 months. So those averaging those 2 months brings those right back into our budget. And our length of stay was slightly unfavorable, but again, our CMI was slightly up. Our ED continues to be very high. The month of August, we saw 10,617 visits in our emergency room. That was, I believe, the second highest month this year. And our urgent care visits, although they show slightly below budget, saw another 4,700 patients for the month. That is an enormous amount of traffic through our emergency department for the month. Our total clinic visits are back up for the month of August, as you can see by the blue line. Although they are slightly under budget by about 2%, we did see an uptick there. And on the next page, for some other statistics, our observation days continue to be slightly under budget, but about the same as they were back in July. And our inpatient and outpatient surgeries were about 20% above budget. We saw almost 600 inpatient surgeries and 785 outpatient surgeries for the month. Our psych area continues to be very strong. We were only slightly, just a couple of days shy of budget for inpatient. Our emergency visits were right on budget. Our clinic visits continue to be high for August, as were our partial hospitalization. Our FTEs per adjusted patient day are favorable. And on our revenue cycle, days cash on hand are still strong. The exact number is 264 at the end of August. Just as a reminder, you see this tapering off. In February, we get a large infusion of cash from the property tax collection, and that will be the high point for the year.
Does that come in a lump sum? Do they give you a lump sum?
It does. We are given our cash almost immediately when it is received, and most taxpayers pay their property taxes when it's due at the end of.
I do on the last day.
Yes,
Yeah.
we all drop that in the mailbox to get it just postmarked in time. So you can see that, you know, we get some in January, but the biggest bolus comes in that first week of February. And our days remain extremely low in AR at 42. Our payer mix does not change much. You can see the self-pay is 18%, and our connection population utilization from our hospital standpoint is still at about 20%. Our connection enrollment remains about 42,500. On our income statement, the budget for the month was $992,000. Just as a reminder, in the expense side of things, as I had mentioned last month, we have booked $3.3 million worth of IGT expense in August. But we also had some items that were happening up in the revenue side that caused about $1 million deficit in our revenues. We talked about the volumes earlier in the graphs. That caused about a $2 million deficit in net patient revenue for the month. In addition to the volume going down, we also had a slightly higher self-pay mix that impacted our collections for the month. And in addition, down here, we in the other operating, we did get about $500,000 in our trauma funding. Now that was budgeted throughout the year, but we received $500,000 in this month. So the year-to-date trauma is right on budget, but we got a little bump this month compared to our budget. So that helped offset some of the volume underage. So year-to-date, after booking the IGT expense that we talked about last month, we lost $3.9 million compared to a $992,000 budget. Year-to-date, we are at $33.4 million compared to a $20 million budget.
No reason to panic, just watching it closely though.
Yes. And as a reminder, we will be closing the year next month. I will be bringing you a preliminary month in September. We do have some year-end entries that we will be making. We are also going to be working through some finalization of our uncompensated care estimates, which is a big number for us. And I'll also be bringing back to you if we, our final numbers and our estimates, if we do not have a final number for close. We hope to be bringing audit final number back to you in the December meeting. We are working with BKD this year. We usually have that audit report for you in late January, which means that audit draws out for what seems to be a very long time for me. and for my staff.
Not for us, though. It doesn't
Yeah,
really-
it's just another day.
Yeah.
But so I have worked with BKD, and it is an early December board meeting, but we think that we can bring that audit report to you and get that finalized. So next month we will be talking about our year-end close, and then in December we will be presenting early December our audit.
Great.
So want to get a bow on this year and get that finalized.
Yes, sir.
Board to Finance Committee.
The Finance Committee is going to see the finance report first because it also serves as the audit committee here. And then at the next board meeting, I believe that they will accept the audit at the on the consent
Yeah, I think
agenda
that's how we
is
did
how
it
it works.
previously.
We don't normally meet in December.
We don't have this in.
There is a scheduled finance committee early
Is there?
December, like the 12th, 13th.
With the board.
You have a finance committee, but not a board.
We'll work through that scheduling.
Yeah.
Around that time period.
Yeah, if not, we'll figure it out, but
Sharon, before you move on that, I do have one question on contract labor. What department is sending that over?
so there is quite a few areas that are over in contract labor, and let me explain how we budget for that, and let me tell you why it's not always a massive concern for me when we're over in contract labor. So when we budget for salaries, we budget for departments to be fully staffed. And we are not always fully staffed. And so, especially on patient care areas, you have to cover your shifts, and sometimes that's done with contract labor, not always in nursing. But in other areas, we do use contract labor as backfill. So there will be underages in salaries, and there will be overages in unbudgeted contract labor. So if you look, we are slightly under in salaries, and we are over in contract labor. And I can tell you some of the departments that happened in August. If you'll give me just a second. And we don't always budget for those, and we either tell them to budget for a full-time position, and if that full-time position is not filled, then they can use contract labor, but we don't allow them to budget for both, so it comes through as
Okay.
unbudgeted.
I'll get some more of it in HR committee. That's one of the deals I think we need to pay a little bit more attention on HR in that. So I'll just ask Nikki to do some things and
Yeah,
report it through
the
HR.
report I have here does not give me the actual departments.
All right.
There are some budgeted areas that we staff with contract labor, such as EVS. So we do have significant areas that, we don't budget salaries, but we budget as contract labor. But there are other areas that we budget as staff. And when we don't have them filled, we allow them to bring contract labor in until we have that permanent position in. I've lost my presentation. So if y'all have your board portal open, I'll try to do my best. On page 45, we have the statistics for the physicians and the acclaim. again, from the statistics, we have removed any of the activity that was created for the physicians that have not been onboarded from the UNT side because they will not begin until September 1. So this really relates to the UNT, or just the PG side. Can you move it forward one? Maybe close the, yeah. So the encounters are slightly under budget, but that is similar to the prior month. I think I'm just gonna skip on to page 47. And very similar to July, August has some big variances, mainly in the net patient service revenue for a claim and purchase service, again, because the UNT physicians are not beginning until September 1, and this budget was built with the assumption they would already be on board. And from a bottom line perspective, the loss was 1.1 million compared to a loss of 250,000. Again, the infrastructure was built to support twice as many physicians that were onboarded. So I'm not sure September is going to look like a normal month because it's a new month, but all of the rev cycle, all of the finance, the analyst, the credentialing folks are here to support twice as many physicians.
Yep.
Sharon, before you move on to that, pediatrics is such a big drop, and did they lose staff because they were?
Yeah.
That should not be impacted.
I had the same question, Dorothy.
Yeah.
So the graph you're asking about is this one. Steve asked me about that, so I'm better prepared to answer. It's most likely two things. We did have 2 additional pediatricians that were in PG that did not come over to a claim. However, probably the better explanation is that a lot of pediatrics that when the budget was created a year ago, and remember, this budget was created mainly in PG, so the PG budget kind of got brought over to a claim. The pediatric clinic kind of got decentralized. So a lot of the pediatric activity that might have been budgeted here is now in the actual family practice. So it could be a combination of we've got some open positions that we are trying to fill, and that not all pediatrics is being captured in the pediatric clinic, that a lot of the children are being seen in our family practice clinics. So this, although it's small print, we've already talked about the hospital, we've already talked about a claim, and there is some residual on PG, and there may be for several months to come. We have a few payments coming through. We had some EMR payments for PG. We also had a quality incentive payment come from Cook Children's for some past PG activity. We are also paying some malpractice payments down here in benefits. We are also paying some CME for physicians as they wrap up some of their benefits. And that would conclude my report for August.
Any questions for Sharon on this presentation? Okay, I'll entertain entertain a motion to accept the report.
Move approval.
Motion by Mr. Nguyen, a second by Reverend Emerson. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, Ms. Clark. Okay, so item 6B, correct?
I would like to request approval for a new managed care agreement with Superior Health Plan. This is one agreement with 3 attachments. We have been working with Superior. The largest, most impactful of the 3 attachments, I believe, is the exchange component. Superior will be offering an exchange product in Tarrant County for 2017. To the best of my knowledge, there will be 4 exchange plans being offered in Tarrant County. One of them is Blue Cross Blue Shield, which we participate with. We are an in-network provider. By signing this agreement, we will be in network with Superior. We are in talks with Molina Health Plan, who may also be offering a product in Tarrant County. And Cigna currently offers a Tarrant County product as well, but is a closed network. And JPS is not an in-network provider with Cigna. And the current providers, we are a in-network provider with Aetna, who will not be offering an exchange product. Scott and White, who we believed would be offering, has also announced that they would not be participating on the exchange in Tarrant County. So at best, I believe there will be 4 players in Tarrant County for
We'll have 3 of
next.
them. Potentially have
And
3 of them.
United Healthcare is moving away as well, and we were not in network for United. So for 2017, this would give our patients a second option if Superior does offer a product. So there is also an attachment for a Medicaid product. Currently, Superior is not, for the STAR program within Tarrant County, they are not a provider. There are 4 major providers in Tarrant County. Those would be Cook, Amerigroup, Aetna. We are in network for those 3, and Cigna, which we are not. So this Medicaid product is more for the rural areas. They are Star Health, which impacts a lot of the foster kids, and the MRSA CHIP, which is the larger rural area for Texas. So that is the Medicaid product in this contract. There is also a Medicare attachment. Superior is not a large player currently in Tarrant County, but I think in a year or 2 they may plan to enter the market. So this would put us in network for any future Medicare Advantage plans.
Cool. Any other questions for Sharon on this?
Move approval.
Second.
Right. Motion by Mr. Bose, second by Reverend Emerson. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Thank you, Sharon. Ms. Prachel. Item 6C.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So the first agreement I have before you is the interlocal agreement between MHMR and our and the hospital. And this is to provide services for homeless patients integrated with their MHMR appointments. So if they need primary care while they are having their MHMR appointment, we can share that data and take care of those patients better. This is a revenue-only contract. It's a coverage contract. They're covering the cost of our staff and our provider to see these patients while they are there.
Okay, you've heard the explanation. Any questions for Diana? I'll entertain.
Move approval.
Motion by Ms. DeBose, second by Reverend Emerson. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes.
Okay, the next agreement I have before you is an assignment and assumption agreement for the leased space for our Ben Hogan Clinic. This is a three-way agreement between THR, UNT, and Acclaim, as that current lease with THR belongs to UNT, so they have assigned that space to us to manage and run those clinics. The amount was budgeted and anticipated for 2017.
Questions for Diana? We have a motion by Reverend Emerson, second by Mr. Powell. All in favor, please say hi. Please say aye. Say hi if you want. All opposed?
Yeah.
Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you. The next agreement, and I apologize, I forgot to mention, both of these have already been approved by the Acclaim Executive Committee ahead of coming to the Finance Committee. The next agreement is the assignment assumption agreement for the Klabzaba Clinic. Again, it's the same arrangement between THR, UNT, and Acclaim. It assumes the cost of the lease for that space, and that it was also anticipated and budgeted.
Okay.
I'd move for approval.
Motion by Mr. Powell, second by Mr. Nguyen. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, Diana. Trudy, item F. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. I'm here to present a pricing agreement that was a result of a RFP for trauma plating and fixation. And this is for plates, screws, and rods for trauma surgery. And basically, we were able to get a decrease in our annual spend and a savings percentage decrease of 22.9%.
Nice. Well done. Any questions for Trudy?
Move approval.
Motion by Mr. Bose, second by Reverend Emerson. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Trudy. Melinda. Good morning. Item G.
We're here to talk a little about our annual renewal for our 3M software. It is just a renewal contract, but if you don't mind, I'd like to just take 2 minutes and tell you what we are doing with that software, because it's distinctly different than what we used to be doing. So you may remember about this time last year, we were all holding our breath about going from ICD-9 to ICD-10 coding. Just a reminder that that coding then at the end of a visit is how we get paid. And we all held our breath, and it was a non-event. That was a wonderful thing. To prepare for that, 3 years ago, we bought from 3M something called 3M 360 Encompass. And from a physician perspective, it's kind of interesting. The whole purpose of that is that we take physician documentation, we send it to 3M, and 3M uses natural language processing against that text information and comes back and does 3 very specific things. One is it helps the coder determine the correct code. In other words, if the coder thinks the code might be this, it said, well, we noticed this, this, and this. You might want to rethink that and come up with a better code that would increase our reimbursement. Secondly, and much more importantly, and lots more emphasis now than we've ever had before, is our clinical documentation improvement nurses, who we've increased the number of those, and they are beginning to look at more inpatient records and some outpatient records, because that's also giving them concurrent with care. That this is not after the patient's been discharged when it's too late for us to do anything, but concurrent with care, saying, gee, we've looked at this documentation and we believe that these other things exist. If we could get those documented, that would appropriately increase the code. We can't upcode, of course, but it would appropriately increase the code. Now, that's not only important from a revenue perspective, but it's very important from a quality perspective. So we used to look at 3M as something that helps us with revenue. Now we look at 3M as something that absolutely also helps us with quality, in that it looks at what other conditions might have existed that allow us to indicate why a quality score might be what it is, because there was more wrong with that patient than we had initially documented. And then thirdly, and I'm very excited about this, is it includes something called clinical indicators, where it actually looks at that information right now while the patient's in the house again and notifies the quality team that it looks like we have a problem happening with this patient. They can then, the CDI people can then go back to the physicians and the nurses and let them know about that. Once again, something that we can correct while the patient is still in house. So those are the three major uses of this software now, as opposed to what we've talked to in the past about just coding after the fact.
Do they have additional software down the road so that you can take that information and, I guess, populate the RAF score?
They are beginning to look at that. They're getting much more ambitious now. They really want to be a bigger player, not to be known as the coding, but much more known for population health. They are now getting together with the payers and getting payer information to add to the coding information that we as hospitals send them, so they can begin to give a better picture back to the hospital about what's happening with that patient. That's not so important for us because we don't have our patients using outside organizations with other payer information, but it will be great for the industry as a whole.
And this one will improve our CDI and all that stuff.
Absolutely.
No more questions.
Okay. Any further questions for Melinda?
Move for approval.
We have a motion by Mr. Nguyen,
Second.
second by Mr. Bose. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Melinda. Motion passes. Okay, Mr. Mendenhall, been waiting for you.
Yeah, I'm sure you have, absolutely. So I don't know if you're waiting for me because I'm sitting between you and lunch, but I'll take it. So, as opposed to just asking for approval for something, I had the opportunity to meet with Robert about this, and we decided to put a presentation real quick for the board to understand where we are. If you remember, back in February, we started exploring the opportunity to do some live streaming. And at that particular point in time, we did not have a capability within JPS to be able to do that. And so you guys were very gracious about moving us to the Tarrant County boardroom rooms, and they were very gracious to us, and they taught us a lot of things about...
We were not gracious in moving you.
Well, I kept my job, so I consider that as gracious, so thank you.
He sees it as grace.
Yeah, I felt the grace. But they were very gracious, and they taught us a lot about what we needed to look at as far as outfitting JPS for this. So just real quickly, let's talk about where we were. The original request from the board back in February was to be recorded and to do some live streaming. As we looked at that, and we started looking at the utilization of this room, particularly this room and some of the other rooms that we have, there's a lot of things that happen in this room. It's not just board meetings. You can see the dividers that are here, and sometimes we divide these rooms into 3, sometimes we divide it into 6. But there's trauma talks that happen in here, ground rounds that happen in here. We're a teaching hospital, and there's lots of people that come in to teach our residents. There's lots of people that come in and be able to teach our staffs. We have all hands meetings in these rooms for IT, where we have about 130 people that come into this room, and then we stream out to them. Mr. Early has Leadership Connection in here, where we have 100, 200 leaders in this room that's packed in here like sardines, and it's standing room only, but we do a lot of things in these rooms. So when we started looking at the capability of outfitting these rooms for audiovisual technologies, it's beyond board meetings, and that's some of the things that we're going to be talking about. But we also needed the ability to not only do things in this room, but then to be able to link up other rooms for overflow and to be able to stream and do video conferencing as well. And then keep a repository. And one of the very cool things that we started looking at was the opportunity of launching jpshealth.tv and putting our content out there. So when we're trying to recruit residents from med schools and so on and so forth, that could be a marketing tool for the best of the best for us to be able to say, here's what you're going to be learning when you're at JPS. And we have the technology and we have the capabilities of porting that information, those videos to you and streaming it to you, and they can look at it on demand. And so that's one of the things we're going to be looking at as we put together this technology as well. When we start looking at it, here are the things that are going to be included in the proposal that I'm going to be asking for in just a moment. For this room and the ECR, we're going to turn the ECR into a training recording facility as well. Right across the hall here is 5 not 4K cameras. We can see you guys in high def, 1080, and that's close enough. And so we're going to be doing 1080p into these rooms, but we're going to be doing a switcher that can handle 4K. So basically what that means in audiovisual speak is we're allowing ourselves to do some upgrades over the next couple of years when those 4K technologies come down in price. But we are going to be outfitting the room with that capability when that happens. We're also going to be right up there where you have the projection screen. We're going to move the projection screen out and use it as a backup, but we're going to put a video wall there, so a 2x3 video wall. And the reason why we're doing that is this projector is, as you saw at the last board meeting, we roll the dice every time we turn it on. And it's time to put something in.
It came with the original note from Thomas Edison.
It did.
It's probably time.
It's probably time to move it on. So we're going to do a 2x3 video wall on that wall. Get rid of the projection, so we can always be doing the things that we need to do in here.
Replaced by TV.
What's that? So yeah, if something goes down, we can just replace the TV. We can replace that one component. And they're LED 3mm. When we put them all together, it's going to be like a 3.5mm line in between each scope. So it's going to be really, really nice. We're going to be doing audio and equipment for these two rooms as well. So I know you guys love the rat's nest that's in between these tables that we put in every week for you guys. That will all be removed. We're actually going to be putting wireless mics at each one of your stations to get rid of this rat's nest. We're also going to be doing wireless mics to the podium, wireless mics to the ECR as well, so that if we do a presentation in there, that can be totally independent to what's going in here. We're also going to change this so that it'll be zoned. So if someone needs to do an audiovisual presentation in this third of the room, we can be doing another one on the back third as well, and one in the middle as we move forward. We're also going to be
a light show, any lasers or anything?
Absolutely, there's going to be disco lights, everything's going to happen. We are going to change the lighting in this room though too, and just because there is some washouts when we put the cameras, but that's part of the construction costs that we're going to be putting on here. But no mirrored balls. We're going to put some room control units in play as well, so that if people come in here and need to do audiovisual, that they can just hit a button and TVs will come on for them to be able to do that. And just like you saw at Tarrant County where they had some screens kind of throughout their room, we're going to do the exact same thing and put some screens throughout the rooms so we can divide them off, as well as people in the back can see what's going on at the front. And one of the things that I haven't told Sharon Clark about that I think she's going to be most excited about is the annotation for presenters. We're going to put a screen right here. And they will be able to do play-by-play, circles, they'll be able to do underlines, they'll be able to put words on it, they'll be able to do anything we want to. You're happy about that, aren't you? You'll be John Knapp all the way. And
You'll be like a coach.
yeah, absolutely. If we move these dollars from this bucket to this bucket, put an X in it, we'll be fine. But the reason why we're doing that is we didn't want to take away a capability. What we found out is putting LED screens at the front, which is what we will be doing. Now a laser pointer will not reflect off an LED screen. So we had to replace that capability so that the presenters can make some notes and do some things as they were going through that. And then lastly, we're going to be doing a build out. So that's just a real quick look at the build out we're going to do. We're going to close off this door right here, put a wall right there, and then take out those storage closets, and that's where a video production room is going to be built out, an audio-visual production room with a glass so that they can see into this room, they can hear into this room, but we're going to be building that out, all the electricity, all the HVAC, everything's going to be going back to there to control these rooms that are going to be on premise here. Project costs. So originally we came to you back in February when we did some thoughts that we would be between $250,000 and $400,000 depending on scope. Construction between $20,000 and $30,000. So we put into the FY17 capital budget $430,000, assuming worst case scenario when the bids came in. When they all came in, what we're going to be asking for here in just a moment is $316,000 to DRI. So it's right in the middle of that scope, but we're getting some fantastic technologies for that were originally out of scope because we didn't think we could afford. And now when it comes back, it was actually right within our budget to be able to do that. So the timeline. So we've completed a lot of tasks, and this has kind of been our working document over the last 3 months to really move this project forward. And so right now we're in front of the Finance Committee to be able to talk to you guys, get approval. It will go to board obviously on 10/13, and we're looking at about 90 days.
Don't get too far ahead of yourself yet.
I hope that it will go to board approval on 10/13, and if it does, thank you, Steve, I appreciate that. And then if it does, then we'll have about 90 days to build out. So then the first board meeting in January would be the time that we would unveil this technology. So just real quick, I want to talk about some personnel. So Digital Resources has been with us at the hip. They're the ones that Jason's been over here running the video and the sound and the live streaming for us over the last several weeks. They are going to continue being with us during this project. So part of the RFP project, part of the RFP that we put out there included post-install another 90 days. So they're going to be sitting with us at the hip, making sure all the new technology is going to be working for us. Derek Williams, who you see over there, Derek, raise your hand and say hello. He has been very instrumental in putting together this and working with DRI, and he will be helping to lead our technology endeavor as we continue moving this up. Bill Pugh isn't here today, but Ted Hammond is over there, so Ted, say hi as well. And the three of them are going to be backing each other up with this. And in fact, one of the big risks, if you look at risk for this project, was we don't know what we're doing. And this is brand new technology. So we've sent Derek and Ted and Bill to a school called the School of Technical Arts. And every Tuesday and Thursday night, they're going to the School of Technical Arts to learn about audio and video streaming. So they're learning about all these technologies. And their class will actually wrap up in December, which will be good timing then for us to go live with this. And then Rob Davis, who's sitting in the back and who was sitting by me, Rob has a very sordid, jaded past. And Rob is one of our security analysts today, but Rob used to be the guy that ran trucks into coliseums to build out huge concerts and then tore them down. So he was a roadie, and then he decided to get a real job and come to work for us. But he's been very instrumental in this as well, and he'll be helping run this as we move forward with all the other capabilities with telehealth and some of the other things that we're doing. So if you don't have any questions about that, I'd like to put the recommendation in front of you to award this proposal to Digital Resources for $316,206.
I noticed you also have a projector.
Yeah, so the projector is going to be in the ECR. So the ECR projector in there is not capable, thank you for looking at the detail, DT, of running this type of audiovisual. So we're going to take out the projector that I think we put in there maybe a year and a half ago, and I think we paid like $500 for that projector, and put a good projector in there that can run this type of capability.
May I make a suggestion?
Yeah.
Because I noticed that it's not a short throw type of projector.
No.
You may want to consider that so that it doesn't have a shadow when people are standing up.
That is a great idea. That's a great idea. We will do that when we do that install.
I will say that David and JR and the team have done an excellent job at dealing with this. As I mentioned, as David mentioned, this is new technology for us. The other thing is, I'm incredibly impressed with all the other aspects. This is not just a live streaming for board meetings. This will allow us, we have people, David mentioned our leadership connection. This room is so full that it's challenging sometimes to get everybody in. We can have an offsite and we can transpose what we're doing in here at that leadership meeting and send it to others in another room. It's hugely helpful. So this is all encompassing. I'm very proud of David and proud of JR for all their hard work. The other thing I'm proud of them is that we've taken folks within our structure and elevated them to allow them to be able to figure out how to use this. And I think we're going to have a really good system. Should y'all want to go this route, I think it is a good way. I think it's efficient, and it's less money than what we had originally thought, with a lot more added to it than what we had originally thought we could even come close to affording. So, David, thank you. JR, thank you for the hard work on this.
Yes, thank you both. A very smart way of doing this.
Yeah. So just one other question.
Yeah.
Once this is set up, will there be a feed into the security office that they can see this meeting as it's going forward?
The answer is absolutely yes. That was not necessarily right in scope, and I'd like to talk to you offline about why you're asking that question. But the reason why I say it's absolutely possible is once we get this technology on, every PC in the network in the district will be able to log in to be able to see what's going on in here and to be able to live stream any event that's going on in here. So it's not set up as a security camera per se, like an always-on type situation. But when there are events in here, yes, they'll be able to see what's going on.
Yeah, I think that's key based on
I agree.
discussions we've had.
Yeah.
I agree. I think that'll be hugely helpful.
Perfect.
Great. Any other questions for David?
There's an extra panel here. No, I'm just kidding. It's very totally done.
You're gonna be funny when you
I'm not meeting
Please
this.
don't try that,
We have a motion by Reverend Emerson, a second by Mr. Wynn. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you,
Thanks,
David.
Dave.
Legal counsel, any reports? No. Reports, nothing in the news? All right, thank you all. We're adjourned.
See?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. I'd just like to say, I know this is Finance Committee meeting, but just to our Finance Committee and to all the audience, that we would take a serious look at developing a love for our neighbor based on what's taking place in our country right now, and not love for race, but love for our neighbor, and that things will get better.
Thank you very much. Well said.
And also, Mr. Chair, if I could, the gentlemen that are here, I know they were all introduced, but in order to set this up as quick as they set it up and take it down, because usually when board meetings, committees, or full board leave, since this is our largest room, we have meetings in here right after this meeting is done. And this crew can take this apart, put it together, and put it down, and you guys have done a great job. So thank you all for all your hard work and all your effort.